From the shadows, she appears. Jennylyn show, illuminates and tells me all yearn to know. With beats that pulse and sense that ignite, taking us to new heights.
Hello, and thank you. I am really grateful that you've all been watching the segments of the unusual experience that I've had and I am having in this particular time of my life. I know it's difficult. I say this all the time because it's happening to me. And as I say it, I understand that any and everyone almost will have a difficult time believing what I am sharing, because it's not the kind of thing you hear except if you watch a Hollywood scary movie, which is designed that way. But it makes me wonder how many of those movies are based on experiences like I am having that someone has had, and that's how they come up with the script. Just saying, but that thought has crossed my mind several times. A lot of the movies I've watched in the past, I've wondered how they came up with such a storyline. But I believe now that some of them have come, like I said earlier today, from someone's experience. And so today I'm back with segment 7. Oh, no, sorry, segment 6. I'm getting ahead of myself. There's so much to share. And so I want to begin this segment by reading something I read somewhere, and it said, you really have to be a bothered person to bother a person who does not bother you. Everyone that I have consulted with for help was attacked and was told that they should not help me. Everyone. And like I said last week, I will be bringing Mel, the woman that I credit the fact that the situation is getting better and almost done. I will be bringing her on the show for the last 2 segments of this series of what I'm going to share with you on here on this platform on Zoom. But for details, when my book is published, I will let you know, and you can read details if you are so inclined to find out in the book. I wanted to clear up something I said last week. I said that the woman behind this, as far as I know, she does a lot of science projects, and that some of it is done at her home. But I want to make sure that I'm not saying everything done in her house is demonic. But I can promise you a good percentage of it is. Because when you hear from Mel next week, she will tell you how many times she's gone in there at night and destroyed what was being done. And now I'm a big part of this, but I don't even know how it's done, how it's destroyed, and I don't want to know. All I want to know is that I want it stopped. I want to be done with it and go on with my life. I believe, and this just occurred to me, and Mel and I have talked about it, and we've both agreed that maybe, just maybe, I was selected to help the dark stuff that attack humans to cross over to the other side and to change over from doing darkness and go to the light, because several of these entities around me, Mel has talked them into changing sides, and they have gone to the light. So I think that's a great thing, and I wanted to share that early in tonight's segment because I don't want to forget to mention it. I've had people reach out to me to ask me last week's segment when I said they kept dumping leaves in the back of my house. Something was up in the tree, throwing the leaves down. I was asked, why did I continue picking them up? And I should have clarified that because I do sound like a complete idiot who had nothing else to do with my time to be back there picking these leaves up, knowing that another storm of it was going to come down. And this is the reason why I kept picking it up. Because that happened in California and it's happening at my current residence now. Whenever things are left outside of my home, if I don't pick them up that night, I can promise you I will not sleep because the activity that goes on in my bedroom that keeps me awake, that is not pleasant, that is designed to stop me from resting and sleeping, is on steroids. And I figured that out. And that is the reason why I kept on picking them up. None of this is fun. I am not sitting here telling the story for sympathy because I'm sure you're looking at me and I don't look like a weakling. No, this experience is not for the faint-hearted because what I have learned is if I were an evil person and decided that I wanted to retaliate in kind, this would have taken me down. But it never even crossed my mind to do that because I don't want to know how it is done. All I want is for people hurting other people to stop and get help because they're clearly not well. Anyone that has done this as consistently as this person has been doing it to me is ill and they need help. But unfortunately, it's done in secret. So a lot of the people around them can't really tell what they're doing in the dark. Now, this person who's doing it to me, I know lives with at least one other person, and that person is completely oblivious. And I've asked many of the spiritual people helping me, how come that individual can't see what is going on? And I was told they have ways of veiling it from that person. And one thing I can tell you right now is CasSandra T always says blessings. She always acts like she is some self righteous, spiritual, God-loving woman, just like the woman she sent from New York who went to my home under the pretense of helping me, who did Bible study with me many weeks before she showed up. They are the ones who talk about God all the time and they donate. They have their smoke screens where they to other people do good, but in the dark is when they do the kind of things that she is doing. Mel, who has been helping me, has shared things that this woman is saying to her as she's clearing away the things she's clearing off of me, and I can't even believe it's the same person. So I could understand the people living with her not wanting to believe it. In these particular situations, you have cognitive dissonance on steroids, because I've had several conversations with one of the people living with her, and they said 100% she would never do that. So I will not say anything else and leave the rest to God. So tonight, I'm not only going to tell you, this week I'm going to show you. I have the story I'm going to share with you tonight. Although I lost a lot of the pictures and the footage that I have taken over the years to prove some of what I've shared, I lost it when I moved to New York and I didn't realize that I was going to lose the cloud where I stored it. I lost all of those, but I did happen to find a picture and a video that will really show you what I'm talking about. So if you don't believe me, or if you have a difficult time believing, I will play the video on here and I will post the picture. During this time, part of what I was told was being done to me is that I was blocked in my entire life was blocked, and I was truly suffering. And I have many talents and many gifts. I started a business from nothing with a friend, but I basically orchestrated the whole thing and did it in 6 months when I was told it could never be done in 6 months. And because I did it in 6 months, I got 6 months rent free. I was told that I'd be great on television and I should look into television. I did the work. I put in the hours, and I've been producing television for 14 years. So when I set my mind to something, nothing stops me. This is why CasSandra will never win this battle, not if she's fighting with me. Because I am light, I do not do dark, I do not do malicious things to hurt people. And so there's no way she will win this battle. But because she blocked my life up, I suffered. I suffered. The one job I had, I got injured. I couldn't work for a long time. And then when I was released to go back to work, I couldn't go back to that company. It's a long story, but no one else would hire me. No one. I was not receiving unemployment. I didn't have a job. I hardly had any friends. It was a horrible time. And like I said in one of the earlier segments, I wanted to die. So when I met Dina, that I talked about last week, who tried to help me dig up whatever was in the ground that was releasing these things into my house to hurt me. She is a flight attendant, and she said, why don't you apply to the airlines to be a flight attendant? Now, I have no desire to work as a flight attendant. It's not something I think I will enjoy. But I thought, when you are down and out, you can't be picky. You have to try for everything, as long as it doesn't compromise your integrity. So I applied, and the airlines called me back. I did 2 phone interviews, and they were happy with me. And so they told me I had to fly to Atlanta for an interview. Now, a month before I found out I had to go to Atlanta for a person-to-person interview, the person that I was renting from died, and her children decided to sell the place I was living in. And I think last week I mentioned that at this point I had decided it probably was not a good idea for me to continue living there. But then I talked myself out of it, because I know wherever I go, these things and the situation follows me. And I have recently found out that Sandra T has had a tracker on me. I don't know how she does it. Mel has since removed it, and I know it's been removed because things have shifted and are very different. So I found myself preparing for this interview, and I was told if I got the job that I was interviewing with Delta Airlines, that Delta would send me into a 6-week training program, which was going to really create a problem for me if I was hired, because I had to be out of the place where I lived in a month. And I lived in a bigger home, and I'd been there for a while, so I had a lot of things. And I didn't see how I could manage both by myself. There's no one helping me. So it was very, very stressful for me. And although I'm someone, if I'm gonna go into something, whether I really like it or not, if I'm going in, I want to be successful at it. So I decided at this point of the game that I will try to get the job, and then maybe later on transfer to a different part of the airline where I wasn't flying, if I would have gotten the job. So the day before I left to go to the interview, now listen to this story carefully, because every single thing I am telling you happened. I am willing to take a lie detector test if someone wants me to do that, but I will also put the video on the picture, like I said earlier. I was in the middle of trying to pack up my home, and then the next morning I was going to fly to Atlanta for the interview. I was in my home packing. I'd already packed my suitcase for Atlanta, had the suit I would wear to the interview. Everything was ready for the trip, but I was packing up my home. I had sold the furniture in my guest room, and this is the new furniture. I replaced the ones I gave away with. I didn't even have them 2 months and then realized I had to sell them because I wasn't going to be living there anymore. I couldn't tell you how because my door was locked. The garage door was open. A hummingbird came into the house. Now, with my experience and birds, when they go into a house, they're always trying to get back out. This hummingbird did not want to get out of my house. I kept chasing it and it won't go. So immediately I heard that voice. I heard my guides tell me, this is not a good bird. You have to get it out of the house. So I'm chasing around the house, trying to get it out. And I lived in a 2-story home. And next thing I know, it flew upstairs. And I got very scared, and I don't scare easily. But it was just so odd. I know people say hummingbirds are good, but this was not a good hummingbird. So I ran next door and I called Cheryl, poor thing. She went through all of this with me, and I was hesitant to go because I think she was starting to get uncomfortable with what was happening at the house. But I really needed someone to help me get the bird out. So I ran over, she came over, we looked everywhere. This hummingbird was nowhere in sight. She said to me, Jenny, I think it flew out. And I said, well, how would it get out? No doors, nothing is open. How would it get out? And she goes, well, where is it? And I said, I hope it didn't just go and die in a corner somewhere. But we looked everywhere, could not find this hummingbird. So it's bothering me because I don't want to be asleep at night and this bird just comes flying out of God knows where in the middle of the night. So I decided I will continue packing, and at some point this bird has to come out, and I'll see where it is. I'll call Cheryl over again and we'll get it out. That night, some people were coming to pick up the furniture in the bedroom upstairs, the guest room, because they purchased it. It was about 7 p.m. Cheryl and I were in the guest room emptying the furniture so that it would be ready when the people came to pick it up. And we heard a noise, and I go, did you hear that? And she said, yeah, what is it? And I go, I don't know, I'll go check, it's in my bedroom. Now, my bedroom had very high ceilings with dark wooden rafters that were right above my bed. And so I looked up and I realized the hummingbird was strategic because it was hiding in the seam of the rafter. The rafter goes up like that, like this. The hummingbird was right there in the crack. And the rafters were dark. And the hummingbird was black, as you will see in the video. Now, if you don't see the video, I had difficulty getting it on this particular video, but I have it. And I will make sure you see it somehow. I looked at her and I go, why would this hummingbird, if it's just a regular bird, come and hide there in the middle of my bed? Something isn't right, I told her. She looked at me and she goes, yeah, that's kind of weird. And I said, let's get rid of it. Now, in my master bedroom, I had a sliding door right beside my bed. So we opened the door and I had one of those long cobweb brooms. So I ran down into my garage where I kept it, and I came back and we were hitting this bird, trying to hit it out through the door. It did not want to go. It was the strangest thing. And I looked at her and I go, when have you ever seen a bird do this? So at one point, I hit it so hard, it went flying off the ceiling, across the room. It hit the wall and fell beneath my dresser. This is a huge, heavy dresser. And I looked at her and I go, great, now I have a dead bird behind there. How are we going to get it out? So we bent down, we took the handle of the cobweb broom and we kind of hit it out from under the dresser to where it came out in the middle of the carpet, and it got up and flew back up toward the ceiling where it was. I promise you, I'm telling you the truth. And she and I looked at each other. Now we know for sure something is off with this hummingbird. And I go, you know what? I'm going to beat the crap out of that bird. It's getting out of my house. And all of a sudden, this hummingbird started raining feathers all over my bed. When you looked on my bed, it looked like somebody had plucked a chicken. There's just blackness all over my bed. Cheryl and I looked at each other. She goes, this is weird. I'm going home. I go, please don't go leave me here alone. Because right about this time, it was getting very late. I looked at her and I go, we got to get that bird out of here. It's not good. So eventually we hit it and hit it and hit it, and it flew out of the door. But I believe that too was strategic, because it did what it had to do, because at this point it just kind of flew out. We didn't even have to hit it as hard, and it left. I looked at her and I go, that is weird. I don't want any of that bedding on my bed ever again. So I ran down to my kitchen. I got some gloves. I rolled up all of the bedding. I put it in a ball and I threw it over the banister of the deck into the yard on the ground. And I decided when the people coming for the furniture had left, that I would take it and throw it in the dumpster at the church that I mentioned last week. And if you didn't see the segment last week, not too far from my house was the church with a huge dumpster in the back. And I went there and I threw it in. I told Cheryl, we have feathers on the floor too, and I didn't want these feathers staying on my floor too long. So I asked her if she would wait downstairs while I got the vacuum and vacuum the floor in case the people came. At least one of us would hear the doorbell to let them in. So she is downstairs waiting in case they ring the bell. And now you see why I dedicated an entire segment to Cheryl. She literally held me up and held my hand while we both tried to navigate this weirdness. So she's downstairs waiting for the door to, and I'm vacuuming, and I turned the corner of my bed closest to my bedroom door. And what I saw, I screamed. She came running up. She goes, what's wrong? And I showed her on the floor in my bedroom was a piece of raw meat. Yes, raw meat with 3 black feathers sticking out of the meat. And the meat looked like it still had blood on it. And we're talking 8 o'clock at night. Now I say, I don't scare. I was petrified. Cheryl looked at me, she goes, I'm sorry, Jenny, I'm going home. That's some kind of voodoo. That's some kind of curse. I'm sorry, I can't stay. She ran home and left me. And I can't blame her. How much more can you do for a person? So she left and my entire body was shaking. I was covered in cold bumps. And I thought, well, Jenny, it's you and God, because this is where you have to sleep tonight. I don't know what all that's about, but I can't leave that thing on the floor. So I ran to the kitchen, I got some gloves, a plastic bag. I got some ammonia. Someone had told me, and have you noticed how I clear my throat when I'm talking about this? This does not happen. I talk all day to people. I don't have this issue with my throat. I'm not pushing the envelope, but clearly something doesn't want me sharing the story. So I managed to pick it up without touching it. I put it in a plastic bag. I threw it over the back veranda where the bedding was. I sprayed my bedroom floor. I poured like so much salt on the rug. And then, because I was told to put salt and ammonia, and I finished vacuuming up the bedroom floor. Now, the next day, I have to go to Atlanta for this interview. It was tough. It was a hard night. The people came, they took the furniture, they left. I had to go in the dark, pick up that piece of meat in the plastic bag and the bedding and walk, because I didn't want that in my car, walk in the dark by myself, carrying these things to the church dumpster because I didn't want it on the property. But I did. I took it and I came home and I sat in the middle of my bedroom floor and I couldn't stop crying because I couldn't understand what was happening to me or why. I had to wake up at 4 in the morning because I had an early flight to Atlanta. So I got up, I got dressed. That night I didn't sleep. There's all sorts of craziness going on in the bedroom. You can read it in the book. So the next morning, I drove to San Jose Airport because I was flying out of San Jose, not San Francisco. And I was going to leave my car there because I'd be back the next day. I got there in time. I parked my car. I got on the bus. It drove me to the Delta terminal where I was getting on the flight. I was about to check in. He asked me for my credit card. I could not find my credit card anywhere, nowhere. And I knew I had it because I used it when I paid the parking garage where I left the car. So now I'm completely panicked. I looked at him and I said, I don't know what's happening in my life, to my life. I just started bawling. I said, I'm going to an interview with Delta, with your airline. And I've just had nothing but horrors happening the last 24 hours. Can I leave my suitcase with you? And I will try to go back to that parking garage where I used my credit card and see if I left it there. And he goes, sure. And he goes, take a deep breath, everything will be okay. So I walked back out and I'm looking for a van that could take me back to where I left the car. And there was none. And I saw one of the buses that transport people to and from the garage. And I got on board and it was just me and the driver because he was going to pick people up. And he looked at me and he goes, I just dropped you off. Where are you going? And I go, you dropped me off? He goes, yes, I was thinking how beautiful you are. And you're so kind. I heard you talking to someone trying to help them. I didn't even know, I didn't see him, but he noticed me. And he goes, I'll try my best to get you back there. It's not where I'm supposed to go, but I can't leave you here like this. And so he took me. But I couldn't remember exactly where I left the car, the way he took me back. And so I told him, I think it was the place where he dropped me, and I got off and realized I was nowhere near where I left my car. And so I had to walk down this crazy freeway like a mad person trying to find the spot where I left my car to get my credit card and worried that I wouldn't make the flight to go to the interview. So I'm walking down the streets, all these buses and cars are going by looking at me, and I'm crying because I don't understand what is happening to me. I got back, I saw my car, I went running over to where I had left the car. I saw it, and once I knew where the car was, I backtracked to the place where I put my card in to park the car, and my credit card was on the ground. If I had driven back, I wouldn't have found it. But because I was walking, I found it on the ground. It looked like when I took the receipt, the card slipped out of my hand and I stuck them in my bag thinking I had put both, but I only had the receipt. And I could have canceled the credit card, but it was the only one I had with me. I didn't have another one, and I didn't want to travel without a card. So I picked it up, couldn't thank God. And I want you to know, the universe, God, whatever you call him, it doesn't matter. When you're a good person, it doesn't matter what evil people try to do to you. You are protected. Because I sat on that airplane flying to Atlanta, knowing that there's no way in God's green earth I would have gotten that card and made it back to my flight. And when I got back to get my suitcase, the guy said to me, "You've been through enough. I gave you the best seat." I got on the flight. I got to Atlanta. But the entire time going there, I was being poked. My hair was being pulled. And I was sitting on the plane, looking around at everybody, wondering why me? Why me? Why was this happening to me? What did I do? I kept thinking, what did I do? What could have caused this? And I couldn't. And then the next morning, I woke up. We had to be in the lobby of the hotel where I stayed. Oh, I had to change hotel rooms. This entire trip was a disaster. I got into my hotel and there was something that looked like blood on the corner of the bed where I was staying. And I called them up and I said, "I'm so sorry. I think there's something that looks like blood on the edge of the bed. I can't stay in this room." So they had to move me. So they moved me to a different room, but there was something about that hotel. It just didn't, it felt like something was off with it. I didn't feel comfortable there. Anyway, I made the best of it. The next morning, I got downstairs to the lobby and I was waiting for the transportation to take me to the interview. And sure enough, I had the wrong information on my email regarding where I had to go. But because I'm friendly and I speak to everyone, there was a guy in the lobby in a suit, and he started talking to me, and I wasn't a snob. I talked to him, and he said, "Are you going to the Delta interview?" And I said, "Yeah, how do you know?" He goes, "Most of the people dressed in suits here are here going to that interview. We gotta leave in 5 minutes." And I had just ordered breakfast because my email had me going 1 hour later. I don't know why. And he goes, "No, no, no, the bus is coming now." So I just left the breakfast I paid for and followed him out to the bus. And that is how I got to the interview on time, because they said, if you weren't there within 5 minutes of when you're supposed to be there, then they would send you back home and you wouldn't even do the interview. So I went, I got through the interview, and then left I was able to get on an earlier flight to get back home. And when I got back home was another disaster, which I will say for next week's segment. But I am not exaggerating when I tell you everything I did, everything I touched was a disaster. Please, if you haven't seen the previous segments, please go take a look at what I have shared, because when you have heard everything I have shared to date, you will know that you should pay attention to things that happen in your life. And I'm not trying to say that what has happened to me is happening to other people. But what I'm trying to say is it took a long time for me to realize I had to go seek help, because the things that were happening to me doesn't normally happen to one person like it was, and things poking you at nights and pulling your hair, that this is not normal or doesn't mean you have done something bad. I kept feeling sorry for myself because I didn't know what it was. But when I eventually found out what it was, I realized that I had to stand up and fight it. But for years, I wanted to die because I didn't want the life that I was living. I didn't know how I arrived there. I ended up getting a letter from the airlines 2 weeks later telling me they thought I was overqualified to work as a flight attendant and encouraged me to apply to other departments within the airline for work. But I was too busy at the time trying to get out of the home where I lived because the time was running out. And next week, I will tell you the move, what happened the week and day of my move. And like I said before, I do not make this stuff up. I have better things to do with my time. But like I do every week, I just can't praise Mel enough. And I will make sure I leave Mel's email address on this video. She will be coming on when I do the last two segments, and we will share what she's allowed to share regarding how and what she has had to go through to help me. And by the way, Mel does not take money from me. And she works with me 3 times a day. Every morning, my first text message is, "Hi, Jennylyn, how was it last night? How did you do last night?" During the day at work, because we know the times when the attacks come. During the day, in the middle of the day at work, I'll get a text, "Hi, Jennylyn, how is it going at work?" And if I'm having problems, she clears it and I can get through the rest of my day. And then when I come home, "Hi, Jennylyn, how is it at the house?" And usually I come home, put my bag down, and before I could even do anything, I have to go in the yard where I live now and pick up things that are left there. And it is so obvious that people who don't know that are in this neighborhood see it, or within the lot where I live see it. So much so that my landlady has just installed cameras on the side and the back of the house, because she told me she's been seeing things back there that do not make sense. I have not told her about this because I don't want her to be afraid and ask me to leave. I can't handle another move right now. I've just dealing with too much. But eventually I will tell her because she likes me and I don't think that she would do that. But for now, I have not shared this with her as yet. I just want to thank you for watching and for keeping an open mind. I don't care if you believe me or if you don't, because I'm not here to convince you. Either way, I was told by God and my angels to share this story with the world. And as you see, I do it honestly and unreservedly, because your judgments of me will not make this experience go away, as well as you're not the one living my life. And so I'm not here for fame, for fortune. I am here to help set God's captives free. A lot of people having these experiences are ashamed. There's an element of shame that comes with it because it's so abnormal that you don't want to tell anyone this for fear that they will judge you and think you're nuts. But all of you who want to believe I'm nuts, have at it. Because there's nothing nutty about me. And I do not lie about stuff like this. I've told little white lies sometimes because I don't want to hurt people's feelings, but I will never sit here and lie to you about something like this. So thank you so much for listening. And I will be back next week with segment 7. And I will see you then. Thank you.
From the shadows, she appears. Jennylyn show, illuminating sincerity.